get more on this and speak to Peter de Clercq. He is the UN Deputy Special Representative and Humanitarian Coordinator in Somalia. He joins me now live from Mogadishu. Many thanks for joining us, Peter. Give us a sense of how alarming the drought situation is in Somalia.
Well, it is a very alarming situation. 950,000 people in the country are food insecure, and as was said in the report, 1/3 of those are children. And in fact, the situation is so bad that about 58,000 children throughout the country are at a direct risk of dying if assistance is not very quickly provided. Now, I've gone out with an appeal several months ago around the whole Nino effect, and we've only received about 30% of the funding, and whatever little food stocks we had are going to be running out in the next few months. So we are in very dire need of further financial contributions for our humanitarian effort in Somalia.
Tell us a bit more about this El Nino effect. What has that got to do with this drought?
Well, it's a climatic effect which in some areas provides significant and extreme rainfall, and we've had that in the southern parts of this country. And in other areas, it results in extreme drought, and we've seen that very extensively in Ethiopia. As you know, there are 12 million people affected in Ethiopia. But here, the rain has actually been very significant, but through early response together with the government, we've been able to avert a disaster and actually managed to sort of, cap the problem here in the south as far as the rain is concerned. But of course, the lack of rain in the north is much more of a long-term problem. We've been dealing with it for many, many years, and right now it's reaching really extreme proportions.
As you say, drought is not new to Somalia. 4 years ago, there was an intense drought and famine as a result of it. Are lessons not learned from events like that from the past?
Well, certainly lessons are learned, but whether that means that the type of resources that we require are available is, of course, a very different question. In the long run, we need to take developmental measures and not humanitarian measures to make sure that people are resilient enough to not have to suffer year after year. But that requires the type of investment that only can happen in an environment where development projects are possible. Right now, we're not yet in that phase for many parts of Somalia, and we're still very much dependent on humanitarian aid. And as I said, the resource mobilization is not easy. After so many years of crisis, the donors are not as responsive as they are when a crisis is fresh and new.
And as you've outlined, it's children who are at most risk of starvation.
That's absolutely correct. And they have, of course, the least in terms of coping mechanisms that the adults have. So we have to give special attention to them. As was mentioned in the report, people are in fact already being displaced, already moving away from these very dry areas, and many of them have livestock. So that puts additional pressure on their livelihoods, and it makes it even more difficult in the long run for them to survive, because it means that they have less resilience, less income, and that makes them more vulnerable to droughts as the one we're experiencing now.
Okay, Peter, many thanks for that. Peter de Clercq joining us from Mogadishu, talking us through the dire situation in Somalia and other parts of Africa as a result of drought.